The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
Okay, I have a guest on the air here, and I'm kind of surprised, but I'm excited at the same time. We have on Mark McFarland. He's running for governor in Michigan 2014. You've heard him. I don't think there's a doubt about it. We have to get behind his back. But now I have a special guest on hold. His name is Mark also. Mr. McFarland, you have a sheriff's kit, don't you?
Yes.
And most of the people here have sheriff's kits. Well, who I have on hold right now is the person that produced the sheriff's kits and is the voiceover on them. And with that, I am going to go here and bring Mark Galar. Mark, you're on the show. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on. One little correction, I didn't make the sheriff kits, but I did make all the videos for the first two press conferences. First of all, let me back up something that Commander Kirshner had said. There was no verification out of Hawaii. That came from Alvin Onaka to Bennett in Arizona, and what it specifically said was, we have information in our files that supports the information on the document that was presented at whitehouse.gov. It did not say that is the document we gave them, and Kirshner hit it on the head whenever he said that they're saying they have information on file, but they're not saying how recently that information was added. Now, based on some Freedom of Information Act requests that went into Hawaii, that information was probably added in late 2006, early 2007. But to correct the previous caller, the state of Hawaii has never, ever said that PDF file that was presented at whitehouse.gov is a scan of what they handed the White House attorneys, or actually Obama's attorneys at Perkins and Coy. So I want to get that clarified up front. Also, it wasn't the previous governor who said she saw the document half typed and half written. That was actually Kaiomi Fakino, the previous director of the Department of Health in Hawaii, who gave that report to Linda Lindell, saying that she had seen it half written, half typed. The previous governor never saw the document, and I just want to clarify that as well. But one of the things I want to do is I want to congratulate Mark for having the courage to come out and say what he said and to speak the truth at the level he is speaking it. And my reason for saying that is that as someone who's very, very close to this investigation, as you said, I produced all the videos shown at the first two press conferences. I still remain as a volunteer researcher with the Cold Case Posse in Arizona, although I'm actually based in Texas. We have taken this thing to numerous conservative members of Congress that you would think would be on our side, and they have been afraid to touch this. Some of them have been very open, Mike. They have said, hey, if I touch this issue, I'll never get reelected again, okay? Alan West told Sheriff Arpaio and another radio host, Carl Gallups, when they went to CPAC, hey, I plan to run for office again, and I'm not going to get elected if people think I'm wearing a tinfoil hat. Yet, when he was running for office in Florida, he told everybody the first thing he was going to ask Obama is, how did you travel to Pakistan in 1982 with a United States passport whenever people with a U.S. passport couldn't travel to Pakistan at that time? So when he's running for office, he's a big man, and he's going to do something about this identity fraud. But then whenever Alan West gets into office and actually gets voted out because he didn't do anything while he was there except vote to raise the debt ceiling, then all of a sudden he's scared someone's going to think he's wearing a tinfoil hat. So for anybody listening who doesn't understand the courage it takes for Mark, who's running for office, to come out and speak the truth at this level, you need to give the man the respect he deserves for this. Now, this is about asking questions, so I do have a question for Mark. Mark, we've talked to a lot of people in Congress who said the minute you even mention that, there is tremendous pressure from both sides to drop it. What type of pressure have you received at this point from various people within your party, or perhaps even the other side, who've said, hey, this thing is toxic, get away from it, you don't want to be involved in this?
So far it hasn't happened. I believe that what the purpose, when I appeared on the Off the Record show, this was done by the very liberal press, in a sense, to try to create damage to our campaign at the onset. But I believe that what will happen is exactly what you're saying, is that there will be pressure, or they will try to assassinate my character, in a sense.
Sure.
But we won't back down on this because, look, the truth is the truth. And we have to look at what we know and what we don't know. And based on what we are looking at right now, there is enough evidence to take it further.
Well, I can tell you this. I know you're on record as saying that the term African shouldn't have been used, and the people supporting Obama say, well, according to a man named, his last name was Sue, T-S-U-E, he felt that was a perfectly legitimate way for Obama to represent himself, Obama Sr., in 1961. Well, it doesn't really matter what Mr. Sue thinks was perfectly reasonable. I don't care what Mr. Sue thinks is perfectly reasonable because it's about law. And in 1961, when Obama was born, the 1961 Vital Statistics coding manual had not come out. They were still using, even in August, they were still using the 1960 Vital Statistics coding manual. And what that manual clearly states is that if someone represents themselves as African American, which was abbreviated AA, if they represented themselves as black, if they represented themselves as colored, the clerk at the Department of Health was still supposed to list them as a Negro. And that's what the 1960 book has, and I can give that to you guys. I actually got them to turn that over to me. That was after, I think, the second press conference. And none of the OBOTs out there trying to support Obama want to talk about the 1960 manual. Now, since I turned that over to Sheriff Arpaio's people, they have been able to find birth certificates where someone tried to represent themselves in 1961 if they were black as something other than Negro. And one of the things that I've actually seen is a birth certificate from 1961. The father put his race as colored. The Department of Health clerk lined through it with the typewriter and wrote Negro over it. So, I don't think I could go to the Department of Health in Hawaii and represent myself as honky, as the father, of a child. Oh, what's your race? Well, I'm a honky. You can't do that. They might have let me write that down, but they would have lined through it and typed the word Caucasian. So whenever the left comes out, I hate to say left, I apologize, but whenever the OBOTs, who are these absolutely Saul Alinsky devotees, come out and state that, well, you could represent yourself as whatever you wanted to. That's not true. There was a book, there was a law that dictated how they had to list people on these vital statistics records. So you're 100% right when you say the term African was not being used. There is no room for that to be used as per the 1960 coding manual. And that's just one of a million things that's wrong with this guy's background, Mark. From his selective service card with the upside-down 8 to his passport that shouldn't have let him into Pakistan to his Social Security number, which was borrowed from somebody in Connecticut who was dead. Everything about this guy is questionable. I'm sure you know that his literary agent represented him for over 10 years as being Kenyan-born. And then when they were questioned about it, they came out and they lied, and they said, well, Barack Obama never told us he was Kenyan-born. Of course he didn't. You guys just made it up, right? That's what they do for all their clients. They just make the stuff up. Obviously, I'm being sarcastic. All the other people listed in that literary agency reference book, all the other authors, said they had to sign a proof before their information went in that book. But in the case of Barack Obama, there's no signed proof, apparently, and they just made up the fact that he was born in Kenya. They don't know why. They can't tell us who told them to do it. All they know is whoever told them wasn't Barack Obama, and that Obama never represented himself that way. Why did they know that? Why were they able to say that in less than 24 hours with such certainty? Because they were lying. That's why. So there are a lot of people lying for this guy, Mark. There are people in the Governor Abercrombie's office that are lying their butts off. There are people in the Attorney General's office office in Hawaii who are lying. There are people at Kapiolani Hospital that are lying. I mean, there are people at the U.S. Postal Service, the U.S. Postal Inspector Service who are lying, people at the Selective Service System that are lying. There are going to be a lot of people in jail before this is over with. But before I get off, let me leave you guys, and Mike, thank you for giving me so much time, but I want to leave you guys with one thing, okay? And I'm very, very limited in what I can say. But there is extreme reason for hope right now. And while I can't share what that reason is, I can tell you that I talk to the sheriff's office or a representative thereof almost daily, sometimes multiple times per day, and never has there been so much enthusiasm, so much confidence, such a high level of morale as there is right now regarding this Obama document fraud investigation. Everybody wants to make it about the birth certificate. It's really not just about the birth certificate. It's about multiple counts of document fraud, and we have never, ever been this excited before. So I'm going to leave you guys with that. But, sir, thank you for your courage, because you're one of the few politicians in the United States that has the courage to stand up and do something about this, and there aren't enough politicians with that kind of courage on either side of the aisle. That type of politician just doesn't exist anymore. So thank you so much for what you're doing. We do appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Mark, before you go, Mark, I'm going to call you after the show, Mark. I'd like to thank you for clearing that up with Linda Lingle. I made that mistake before. I apologize. It was for chemo. Linda Lingle was just scrambling around. She was all over the place trying to settle this. And, Mark, do you realize that your voice is all over Congress right now?
My voice? Well, I hope so. Are you because you sent them the kits, or
yes,
is that it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, good. I hope somebody's actually listening to it. You know, I mean, they've done a good job of avoiding it. Let me. I know I said I was getting off, but let me tell you one more thing, Mike, and maybe this will give Mark some further insight too. For the better part of 6 months, Arpaio and his people tried to get conservatives in Congress to help us. Now, they've got one guy who's very solid, and he's got some interest from a handful of others, okay? But what I can tell you is that most of the people who turned down Sheriff Arpaio or representatives of Sheriff Arpaio said the same darn thing every time. The Speaker of the House said this isn't to be touched. The Speaker of the House said we're not going to pursue this. Okay? So it's not Democrats running interference. Hell, it's John Boehner. It's John Boehner who's getting in the way. You know, and some of them are being told crap like, oh, well, if we impeached Obama and then removed him from office, there'd be race riots from coast to coast. What a racist comment. There would not be race riots. Black people aren't going to riot just because Obama gets caught committing a crime. That's an insult to black people everywhere. So, you know, and a lot of them always said, well, first it was just, well, we're going to vote him out. He won't get a second term. We'll vote him out the right way. And now some of them are saying, well, it's too late. He's got his second term. We'll just let him finish it, and that'll be that. But the bottom line is we have a Congress made up of cowards, particularly on the Republican side, okay? If I were a Democrat, I wouldn't be pushing this issue. I wouldn't butt my own party. You know, it takes a hell of a lot of guts to do that. Yeah, I'm proud of anybody who can do that. But the Republicans are afraid of this issue. They're afraid because the media attacks anybody that even mentions this. Mark's finding that out right now. You know, you wouldn't believe that. I'm sure you get them too, Mike, the letters I get, you know, the threats I get. It's absolutely ridiculous. So anyway, I'll say it again. It takes a hell of a lot of courage to do what Mr. McFarland is doing. It takes a hell of a lot of courage. We don't have those kind of people in Congress anymore. We don't have them in state offices anymore. The last time we had people like this was when our founding fathers were basically letting Britain know that we wanted to govern ourselves. That's the last time we had people like this running for office. So once again, my hat's off to you, sir. I wish you the best of luck.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.